Hi, I'm Peyton. I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Sunday Remedy. We have Sophia with Well Fully Soap with us today. And we're just here to talk about, the way that our bodies thrive on real nutrient rich foods. And we're going to let Sophia kind of introduce herself. She has a beautiful Instagram platform that we found her on. Sophia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk health and wellness all with you guys. I started my journey with kind of the functional nutrition health space about 2 years ago, was when I found a great passion for it. But I do feel like it stemmed from just when I was a little kid. My mom kind of had her own little revamp when she was reaching her 40s, where she noticed that just the standard things that people were eating and doing wasn't really satisfying her, and she kind of started seeing how it was lingering to her health. So I felt like I was growing up in like my preteen years and my teenage years already doing things that a lot of family households weren't doing. And so that kind of translated into me noticing when I was in college that I was already doing things that people weren't doing. And friends just kind of started with me asking me questions like, "Hey, I'm coming off birth control. What do you want me to do? Do you have any suggestions?" So things like that. And then that's when 2 years ago, I really was like, I don't really want to be almost guessing about doing these stuff. I really want to just kind of get a certification and do a full deep dive in it.
Amazing. So, what certification do you have?
I'm a functional nutrition counselor. So basically, everything functional nutrition. Functional means with the different functions of the body. And so you basically learn the different systems of the body, whether that be digestive health, cardiovascular, neuro, reproductive, endocrine, all those. And you basically see how nutrition and lifestyle affects those. And so that felt like it resonated with what I was mostly interested in.
So, question for you. When you are taking on new clients, what is your process?
Absolutely. First thing is the most in depth history intake we can do. And that is with things like, how did your mom's birth go? Did you breast or did she breastfeed you? Were you formula fed? Was there any issues with that? Were you tongue tied? Were you not? So, going really back to how were you even conceived? How was your mom's birth process? How did her pregnancy go? And so, we really sometimes ignore those factors and we start usually from, well, when did your symptoms begin? Right. So that's usually what we always kind of want to start with. But then we slowly go backwards and just kind of ask, well, how's your dad's health? How's your mom's health currently? How are they doing? Do they have any health issues right now? So very, very deep dive, quite literally since conception until now. And so it's really cool sometimes to give the paper back to people and have literally an entire layout from timeline of everything that has ever happened to them.
I appreciate your in-depthness because I feel that it's interesting when someone goes to the doctors and the doctor, like you said, talks about, well, when did the symptoms start? But patients aren't the doctors. So it's hard for them to identify what to tell you. You have to ask like these probing questions. So the more information you have, the more background knowledge you have on diagnosing and figuring out a treatment plan. But it's interesting that, the expectation is you have to come to the doctors and you kind of have to be a doctor yourself in the sense of I had to think about what's been going on with me that I should talk about because there's probably things that I felt that are relevant that have been dormant for years. But I don't like the patient has to connect all the puzzle pieces. So I love that you're doing these in-depth things to connect them.
Absolutely. And sometimes I do see people coming in and they're used to that kind of standard. You come into a doctor's office and you have 15 minutes with them, and that's it. And you're talking about your symptoms and when they began, and that's basically it. So, with us, with going over all of that health history, it really helps them get a sense of even understanding why certain things happened. So it's not only me looking at it. I want to show them and I want them to start connecting the dots. So it kind of shows in like a why did this happen to me to this actually makes a lot of sense why this happened to me. So it really helps them kind of find their why.
It's a good reflective, I think, exercise too, because most people, I heard you ask, were you a tongue tied baby? Were you breastfed? How'd those things go?
those are things that I don't feel like everyone knows about. And it's like, I don't know, was I? Did I die? Did I have any problems? It's kind of educational in that, you're also bringing awareness to a lot of things that potentially people have just never heard before. It's a totally different way of thinking, and it's a way for, you know, your clients to come in and actually own their health going forward. So it's like you get them the tools and the information, and then going forward, they kind of know. So after they do this whole in-depth process, where does your next move usually happen?
Usually, it's basically going off of what are they struggling with first, and if that is they can't sleep or they are so intolerant to so many foods, or their lifestyle is where they can't get any movement into their day. So basically, I am beginning with the very foundational structures of let's try to see if we can get you to sleep, we can get you to move, and we also can get you to poop. That's a big one too. So it's definitely those handful of few structures that I prioritize the absolute most, and for those things to work, I will usually have to do other things to aid them, but just regarding, if there are super severe symptoms that someone just needs to soothe and aid, then absolutely we will also do that parallel to everything else. But if that means increasing certain minerals or increasing certain foods in the diet so that they can sleep better, that would be a prioritization of those structures. Can you have your meal outside? Can you even go for a 10-minute walk after your meal? Does that mean waking up just 15 minutes earlier and then you can go on a quick walk outside? So, just basic things like that. And then I would believe that it always ends up translating where the symptoms start getting better. And then we can translate onto other symptoms and start working there.
They do all of these different things. Is there any advice that you would give to someone who's having trouble sleeping? Just kind of blanket advice. Are there any minerals, supplements, just ways that they should be kind of looking to help themselves with these different things?
Absolutely. I would say that do the things that are free, and that means turn off your phone and turn off your computer once it hits sunset. And if that means an hour after sunset, that's still fine. If you're not able to do it earlier, that would be the most beneficial thing that they could first do that's free. It's just going to bed earlier, and seeing if that even helps. Obviously, that is so easy to say, and sometimes we're dealing with severe insomnia that's been happening for so long that just going to bed means that they're going to be laying in bed for 2 hours and not able to fall asleep. So that is definitely, one thing where focus on the things that you can do. Get up at a certain time, go outside, get sunlight. The more sunlight we get, the more melatonin is produced. Going back to just basics. But other than that, definitely making sure that they're removing any trigger foods, that we kind of can see. And most of the time, that is your, simple carbohydrates that, kind of just turn into sugar into your body. And that might be your blood sugar spiking. And then you can't go to bed at a good time. So definitely just we'll have to be with removing anything that we know. And a lot of us know that it's just a standard. Really try to go hard on don't eat the processed foods and remove the refined sugar because that ultimately just leads to inflammation. I know that we always know that that stuff is gut disrupting, right? Like we know that it's going to affect our gut lining, but other than that, it's also just like a low grade inflammation all the time. And that's also another thing that people really overlook. And sometimes they just have this small, small inflammation happening all the time. And it translates into little symptoms like, I can't sleep. So, and that's a big thing. So, really, the basic foundations is try to actually let your body respond. Don't jump onto, oh my gosh, what kind of pill can I take, during the day to help my body start to produce melatonin and go to bed at a good time. But, kind of give your body a few weeks to readjust, remove the things that could be inflammatory, go to bed at a good time, wake up at a good time so you're actually tired when you go to bed, and let your body do its thing. That's a really big, thing that I feel like people jump across to. I mean, even myself, like in the past, you kind of are like, I'm having a symptom, and then you want it to be fixed in a week. But our bodies are so resilient. Oh my gosh. Really, just if you provide the right things for it, the most basic things, most of the time it will respond.
The sleep thing is very interesting because what I've seen is people actually sometimes get too much sleep, which makes them feel groggy. It's hard for them to wake up in the morning because you think that when you wake up and can't get out of bed, you're just so tired, but you have like 9+ hours of sleep. And now you just feel groggy because you have too much sleep. So there is such thing as too much sleep. Like you can get a perfect amount, but it's just interesting, like the whole sleep thing, not getting enough and then getting too much. There's a perfect balance.
Yeah, I think sometimes that is potentially can be attributed to if you're not living a very mobile lifestyle, if you're not getting in your daily movement, if you're not in the habits of those things, I think sometimes, yeah, maybe it's harder to get up. But, for example, I got home from work yesterday. I was so exhausted, but I still needed to make dinner and get all of those things going. So instead, I stepped away. I did a 15-minute yoga session, and then came back and I was re-energized to just kind of get through the rest of my day. And then I definitely went to bed early. So sometimes I think that is a little light pack. But all right, so I'm loving your process, by the way, Sophia. That sounds
Thank you.
just completely amazing. And I think just we're seeing so many more people jump on this train, take more ownership of their health and talking about how these nutrient deficiencies and all of these different factors are kind of affecting your health, right? So something you mentioned was whole foods versus processed foods. And I think the Western diet, the way that we, look at food, we don't see that in a lot of other countries, right? So it's when you're reading a label, what do you advise people that are new to looking at food labels or anything? What do you look for? What do you avoid?
This might be a little bit extreme, but I am very picky when it comes to those things, especially if someone is already having issues. So, if someone is already having symptoms, I sometimes don't even like the quote unquote natural preservatives that you'll sometimes see in pretty good high quality products. And they'll have a good, certification of analysis and, they're not high in heavy metals and all this different stuff, but they still have a certain preservative. And for your average person that maybe is living a really good lifestyle, they're probably not going to be affected by it. But of someone who's already being intolerant to so many things and actively having symptoms, I would definitely say if you churn over a box of like chocolate covered dates with coconut flakes, then there should be organic cacao, organic coconut flakes, and dates in there. So I'm always like, if you want to buy something that's in a package, please just make sure it makes sense in your own brain that what you're holding is exactly what's in there. So definitely one of those things where and the only reason why I say it could be a little extreme, but that's really when you see results. I mean, oh my gosh, I'd love for people to not have to take extra supplementation and extra herbals and spend they're just so expensive too. And so it's just I definitely like rather advise someone to go in that 90% and only shop at the perimeter of the store and only go to the veggies and the fruits and all of those different things in the meat section and actually learn how to be satisfied with that because you will retrain your taste buds and your body. And it's actually how you see the best results. So I really would love for people who are first diving into it is do the absolute best you can to if you are looking at an ingredient, if we want to make like chocolate, like chocolate muffins or chocolate cookies. Yeah, if you're buying cacao and there should be just organic cacao in that, right? Like there shouldn't be anything additional in there, any random sweeteners or fillers or artificial colorings, even sometimes. So definitely prioritizing that. And I know that balance is so key. And when people dive into it, it could feel so, so overwhelming. But I would always want someone to know that the end goal is to not even need to purchase those. And another factor is you're actually going to be saving money. So that's a really big thing. They're always more expensive when things are packaged, and I rather have that $100 in the month go towards those 10 more dollars for meat than you looking and reading a label and seeing if this preservative is okay for you to eat. So I definitely think that that's so important, and people think that eating good is so expensive, and absolutely, I mean, the difference is obviously there, but sometimes you look at these pre-made packaged foods and they're kind of more expensive than if you were to buy a chunk of meat and have it for 3 days. So, it's definitely, you weigh it out and you see, but I absolutely think that it's worth just sticking to those whole foods, and you're also going to really enjoy them. You just have to retrain your taste buds to do it.
Yeah. The best nutrition label is no nutrition.
Oh, nutrition label, yeah.
If you don't know how to read any nutrition label and you can't identify what products and like what ingredients are not good for you, the best thing to do is just buy things that you don't even have to worry about that. It makes it easier. If you're just buying the whole foods and shopping on the outside of the aisles, it does. Like it takes that stress off of like, I don't know what's in this. You know exactly what's in it. And like you said, then like meat fills you up. So if you just have meat and protein and these things prepped, it's probably gonna fill you up more than a bag of whatever's processed.
Well, that and you feel better directly after consuming those foods, right? When, for example, when I travel, right? Sometimes, you're in an airport, you're kind of stuck, you make do with the best you can, but inevitably I board the plane and my stomach is making noises, right? Um and I'm like, "Oh, I know why. It's because I don't eat like this any other time," right? And I get on the plane and I'm like, "Great. They only have moldy coffee at the airport and they only have, you know, a
That gives me anxiety.
the empty stuff," right? It's like, "Oh man, dang it. All of my favorite things aren't here." And of course I bring things with me when I fly, but there's always those situations where you're in a pinch, right? But the difference that I feel between that versus when I'm home and I'm able to prep my meals and get everything going, it's just life changing.
Like, you have higher energies, right? Like, a processed food, sometimes if it has, like, the negative ingredients in it, it really does feel like it kills your energy. You just feel tired, you're dragging throughout the day. Like, it's just not going to like, I feel better eating protein and having a full snack rather than having, like, an energy drink. Like, yeah, you're gonna have this high energy for about an hour, and then you're really going to drag throughout the rest of the day.
Terrible for your hormones.
Yeah, so tons of other things, but it's just interesting, like, when you actually fuel your body, you can feel a huge difference.
Absolutely.
So, Sophia, tell us a little bit about kind of how you approach, everyone talks about gut health and, the mind gut connection. And how are you looking at the role of gut health in your clients that you work with?
It's the very first thing. Absolutely. It's impossible to ignore because we always have this connection where if your stomach acid in your stomach is not assimilating any of your nutrients, then you're going to be nutrient deficient, and then that will affect your hormone levels and your cognitive function and also your liver and so many different things. And so it's quite literally you need to almost have it at 100%. We before I even move on to anything else, it's we know that we removed any of the inflammatory foods that could be particularly causing issues for that client, and that will look different for everyone because there's certain issue foods that people will have a problem with that others won't. So first ruling that out, and that is sometimes takes a moment to trial and error to see what works, what doesn't work. If they reintroduce a food, is it going to cause a symptom? So definitely seeing where we can get the gut working at its best level in that moment. And sometimes that means you're eliminating things that in the future you can still be eating. So in the beginning, we just want to know what is actually causing damage, quite literally damage to the gut in that moment because it's struggling to digest it or it's struggling to work with it. So that's the basic thing. We want stomach acid to be up, and that's your bitters. You can do digestive enzymes. We could also just begin with warm lemon water in the morning or apple cider vinegar with your water before meals or just in the morning. See how different that makes you feel. Bitters with arugula. We have, dandelion greens, things like that, where that stimulates our stomach acid and our bile flow. And so just really incorporating those few little things into there and see if it works. If you need a little bit more help, then that's, something you would discuss with your counselor and see if you need more. And just removing that, the trigger foods. That's the main thing where we want to eliminate any inflammation that's already happening. Once that is in check, that's when we really want to be incorporating, okay, based on these symptoms, what kind of deficiencies are we most likely having? What are common deficiencies that we most likely know that are already happening, right? And then that goes to, when should we test or when should we just kind of see what we can incorporate? Because there's really no harm in doing that. If you're really low for some reason in vitamin D, then that's has to do with, well, how well is your stomach absorbing it and how are you assimilating it? And how's your body actually utilizing it? And if someone is just encouraging, or if some like a counselor was encouraging to just eat vitamin D rich foods, then but the system can't absorb it, then what's the point of doing that? So there's definitely a difference where some people will come and they're like, I have a good diet, I eat a lot of these foods that you would think would give me energy, but they're just not assimilating them. And that could be with low stomach acid, or that could be stress that is, obviously contributing to the lack of absorption, or you're losing minerals, which is also contributing to lack of your absorption and gut function. So just a lot of factors that, but definitely, absolutely, the gut is the first thing.
With that, how do you feel about food sensitivity tests? I feel like I'm scrolling all of the time. There's always an ad, do a food sensitivity test. I've done certain ones in the past when working with a naturopath. But like, do you encourage those? Do you run them? Is that part of your process, or do you think there's other ways?
I have not run them, but I do know that people do utilize them. And I am obviously open to that idea. But at the same time, I do sometimes feel like there is the controversy of how many insensitivities on there are true. Obviously, there's going to be a lot that, if it is a genuine sensitivity and it makes sense to the symptoms that someone is experiencing because they have symptoms when they eat that food. But I do feel like a lot of the times, it will not have to do with even the particular food that they're potentially sensitive to, but sometimes it's how it's cooked. So I also wouldn't know how that test itself would tell us, if this sometimes, if someone has a hard boiled egg, they'll have a response to it rather than if they had a runny egg. So it's just things like that where if your food sensitivity test tells you that you're intolerant to eggs or you're sensitive to eggs, but you're still able to potentially get the nutrients from it if it's runny, that's just an option. So I do think that it's just
And
so,
you
so it's just things like that where I think it's the best way to just really do trial and error. And sometimes if that means you're really focusing and trying to make sure that you're, kind of looking at every single thing that you're eating. But I think it's just so beneficial long term. You're really going to have an understanding of like how your body is responding.
What are some very obvious symptoms that would make you think that someone has an unhealthy gut? Like if I'm a new client and I'm hearing everyone talk about this unhealthy gut, how do I know if that could be me?
I would say the obvious is gut symptoms, right? So the ones it's like if you are having some type of bloating or if you're having even any aches. I also really look at brain fog is really one where it right away I'm instantly thinking about the gut. Because brain fog could obviously be from there. We all know that there's that huge connection, but the brain fog is often because we either have, an overgrowth going on for bacterial overgrowth in the gut, or if we have just kind of like a damaged gut lining and we're having things entering the immune system that should not be entering the immune system. So
Right.
that's definitely a big factor that I do see, and people overlook the brain fog. Every single client that I've had, that came in with severe brain fog, usually in the morning when they wake up, there is usually some severe overgrowth going on with the gut. And they also will sometimes have symptoms that they're kind of ignoring, and that could be loose stools or constipation, and they're not going to the bathroom. So things like that. It's definitely the most important one that is people don't think that it's connected to it, but also just fatigue. That's also another thing. There's brain fog and there's also fatigue because my question is always if you're technically getting enough sleep, right? You could be getting 9 to 10 hours of sleep, but you're exhausted. Then what's going on with maybe your gut's not assimilating nutrients that it needs? And so that's a big thing too.
Okay, so piggybacking on just continuing our gut conversation, right? How do you feel about probiotics, prebiotics, those types of things? That's another one that you see all the time. Everyone's trying to sell you a pre and a probiotic. So, how do you feel about those?
I would say I would only be encouraged. I like to use Espellardi if it's something that has to do specifically with a bacterial overgrowth. The only reason is because we always know that there's a chance that some probiotics will actually feed into that bacterial overgrowth if it's actually really bad. And so that's the only one that is safe and it actually is really effective to things like candida or just bacterial overgrowth. And so that's one thing. Other than that, I always encourage it to be the most active form, which is your raw kefir and your sauerkraut and your pickles. And it's just, it feels like the most live that you can get. And there is so many studies out there of like how much is it actually absorbed in your system. I do believe that there probably are about maybe 2 to 3 companies out there if I like look back at my, references and I'm like, yeah, I do remember that there's one or two out there that, are proven to actually be absorbed. But I'm like, why would I tell a client to pay 60 to $80 for this, bottle and then there's a chance that it's not even working? So definitely if someone is encouraged, I always encourage do, even if it's yogurt. I know that sometimes yogurt, from the store, it's usually they also just add probiotics into there. It's not always just naturally fermented. But any sauerkraut, any pickles, any raw kefir, that's I always say it's like liquid gold.
Love all the things. That's we got our prebiotics and probiotics, but what would you suggest for natural sweeteners? Like let's say like I love making like granola bowls and just like baking in general. So what do you think are some good options for natural sweeteners?
Absolutely. I definitely say that I know that there is some gut issues that people will have with even things like alternative for stevia and even sometimes monk fruit. People will kind of think that that's always good. And I used to, gosh, like, 8 years ago, I used to be like monk fruit because I didn't think and I was just like, this is so popular. It's so mainstream. Don't eat sugar. So I definitely think that some people can have that, but some people do actually have like more kind of like bloating and discomfort in their gut after. My main thing is my main thing is definitely I love raw honey. I actually couldn't eat honey 3 years ago. I hated the taste of it. I absolutely was like, I can't have a spoonful. It's too sweet. I literally hated the flavor of it. So now I could, yes, but now I'm like eating it spoonful.
Like, it has, like, such a urine so, like, to me, I don't know, anytime I would smell honey, like, I'm just like, it's just too strong, and now same thing, like, I enjoy it.
I gave it to my fiance the other day because I gave him a Nuka honey because we both were kind of coming down with a throat situation. And I was like, look, just take this. It's good. Just a little spoonful. He's like, what is this? And I was like, it's Manuka honey. It's just honey. Like it's fine. Yes. He was like, he's like, Rachel, that was terrible. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I think it tastes good. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But it doesn't taste like normal sugar, so I think that's what people are set like, when they taste honey, it is sweet, but it's nature sweet. So, no, it doesn't taste like something highly processed, it doesn't taste like candy that you would buy at the grocery store for him. Is what I'm It's a different type.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, definitely like the raw honey, specifically raw, right? Because we know that if it's pasteurized, then it's definitely it turns into straight sugar. It also tastes different. So that's probably what I also had when I was a little kid too. It kind of tastes different when it's not raw. And then we have agave and like maple syrup and stuff. So that's definitely ones where I encourage to use. Specifically with something like honey, there is the issue with a lot of recipes will use honey for baking, but technically, honey is not supposed to be heated. So that's a big thing too, where you don't want to throw in a spoonful of honey into hot tea. And you also don't want to put it into something that you're going to bake at 400 degrees. So that's another thing.
I did know the tea thing. I will say I've never put 2 and 2 together
Yeah, but the
with the baking
yeah.
because I'll make, like, the almond flour, yeah, honey cookies.
Yeah.
You done that?
Mm.
So with the yeah, but that's interesting because I will use maple syrup. I also okay, what's your stance on coconut sugar?
I actually yes, that is one that I forgot about. Yeah, definitely a natural sugar. It has a specific flavor for sure, but I think for especially baking, it's probably the best choice you can do because it's similar consistency to just sugar.
Perfect, good. I've been doing that.
So yeah, if you're going grocery shopping, what are 5 items that you would put in your cart that you would suggest to other people?
Got it. Full fat yogurt, absolutely. If you can find A2 organic, that's even better. Or just any organic full fat yogurt. Definitely a form of red meat. Do it cheaper if you need. Do ground beef, organic, grass fed. And also, I do like a lot of chicken drumsticks. I think that they're very versatile. And I feel like people really overlook them because you also have the bone in it and I save all the bones because it's not boiled if you put it in the oven or you air fry it, wherever you wanna do. Once that's done, it still has the ability to be boiled, and then you can turn it into bone broth. So, I do like the idea where you're able to make a broth out of it sometimes too. So, big staple in my house is you'll put, say 5 drumsticks in a big pot. You'll simmer that for about 2 hours, and then now you have a meat stock in there, and then that's when you can add your veggies and sautéed anything that you want in there, and you have a soup. So, yeah, so it's so versatile, and it's definitely used at least once a week in my house. So,
Thanks all for your
Yeah,
information.
I need to do that. It's been on my list. I keep seeing people say, "Save your bones and do the step."
Save your bones, guys.
And I have not been saving my bones.
oh my gosh, it accumulates so fast, and it's the best, and you just have, like, a bag. We literally have, like, a drawer in our freezer where it's just bones. Like, we look like we're crazy.
And you're like, if you find those in my house, it's okay, there's
The
just chickens.
chickens, it's fine. It's fine. They're chicken bones. No, we just got a deep freezer, so I will need to start. I will just create a. I'll get a bone bag. Yeah, what I'll do.
Yeah. Yeah, bone bag, and then once you accumulate, you just pop it into the pot, and I usually like to not even do bone broth only. I would definitely encourage to do, like, a meat stock. I always feel like it also tastes better and it's more healthier for you, and that will look, like putting in some chicken necks or some chicken feet in there, or just, like, a big chunk of meat with bone in, and so that makes it so much better, and so much more fatty, much more collagen in there and just so much more beneficial because it's filled with the glutamine in there too.
Such a great idea. Okay, so we have full fat yogurt,
Red meat.
red meat, drumsticks. What else we got? We got 2 more.
Oh, absolutely, like cilantro and parsley. That's a big one, absolutely. If you could throw in some arugula in there, that's always really great. Cilantro, parsley is like a staple. If someone hates cilantro, I get it, whatever. You can do parsley only. But it's definitely I throw it onto almost everything, especially in my morning breakfast. If I have like something savory, with eggs and some type of meat on the side or anything in at regards, then I'll always just chop up a little pot of it and I'll just put it right on top and I'll eat it with the food. So so good for your liver. It helps detoxify. And so it's absolutely that's a 100% big staple. If you could do raw kefir, do that. But I also make my own at home. So that's definitely much cheaper. Majority of the time you might need to get kind of like stimulate the fermentation process from the milk itself if you were to put it in a jar and let it sit. So, you can, buy some store-bought kefir and put, like, a spoonful in there to just kinda get the process going with the probiotics, and then every time you wanna remake it, you would just save a little bit of the kefir you made and then pop it a little bit into the new jar that you have.
We love having like these helpful tips. And honestly, these are like things that I've never thought of, especially the bone broth. So I'm really excited about that. It's a great tip. So we like to end our podcast with just giving people actionable items. So with everything that you talked about through nutrition and gut health, or what are some things that people can implement today to just make their health better?
I would say First, remove any unnecessary snacks in your house. That's probably one of, like, the secret killers, quote, unquote, in just the US. Growing up, we never had snacks. That's definitely a very big American thing, and I come from a European household, and all of my European friends just do not have snacks in the house, and that's just normal. You have your 3 meals, and you should be satisfied and full in between. If you want a snack, you have fruit. So it's definitely I think that's a big money. You just spend so much money on random snacks, and you're not letting your digestion have a break. So that's a big factor of why people have those digestive issues because they're just literally not getting a break. And you're also just spiking your blood sugar a lot of the time with them. So definitely remove snacks. And then, yeah, in that sense, to remove anything that's unnecessary that you're spending your money on, just unnecessary condiments sometimes. Put that towards spices, some organic spices if you can find them, sometimes even on sale at the grocery store. I always walk past the aisle really quick to see if there's anything on sale. And so things like that, just put your money towards the whole foods and the real food and not do the package, that you're spending too much money on. Another thing is really minimize your use of devices. And that's just like people are like, "Oh, but you're in functional nutrition." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's health and your device is unfortunately not benefiting you." And
Very true.
definitely yeah, so that's a big one and that affects your sleep. So if and your sleep is your health. So you're not going to heal if you're not sleeping. So minimize your device use. And another third one I would say is sweat. I don't think people sweat enough. If you're able to, if you're doing a good, new, healthy revamp of your life, if you can use a sauna, even have a really cheap gym membership and you don't even use the gym, but you go for the sauna, then utilize that. In the summer, it's really easy. You can, go outside and you're just sweating from walking.
Right.
But sometimes the workouts themselves, unless you're actively like dripping, then that's a good sweat workout. But just a workout on its own sometimes is not enough. So actively sweating, it just helps everything. It helps you detox. So especially if you're doing something like removing these processed foods or toxic things that you've usually had in your life, your body needs to remove what you've been putting in it. And so that's the best thing while you're removing, your body is removing excess things through sweating.
Is such great advice. I really appreciate.
I learned so much
I did too, and sometimes that's a little tricky. I don't always find that I hear new nuggets of information, but
because we just like scour the internet for these things, so it's hard. But these were things that
tough.
were as reminders and that I haven't heard before, like the drumsticks. That's key.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with us. So thank you, Sophia. Again, you can find her on Instagram at Wellfully So. We'll tag her in the description. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Bye, guys.